Well, it looks like Ryomen Sukuna is going to end up being the final big bad of Jujutsu Kaisen, and I think he will go down as one of the best antagonists or villains of all time. I mean, he's already one of the most popular of all time, which is crazy, because if we just look at what he's done only in the anime, it's really only the tip of the iceberg with what he's done in the manga. But because I love the JJK series and Sukuna as a character, I wanted to pair Sukuna off with my favorite series of all time, Black Clover. More specifically, the cast of Black Clover villains. What would Sukuna think of these characters? How strong would they be in comparison to the King of Curses? Would Sukuna respect them, or mock them as he rips their grimoires to shreds? Now, for the most part, I will be comparing Sukuna against Black Clover villains one at a time, not the entire rogues gallery at once. I would like to issue a fair warning that this video will contain manga spoilers. When it comes to JJK manga spoilers, it will be fairly light, as I will be focusing on Sukuna's powers and abilities, not really the plot that surrounds him or the current goings of the series. As for Black Clover spoilers, there won't be much at all, as the majority of the villains in this video will be those that have already been animated, but I will reissue a spoiler warning later in the video once Sukuna is finished with the Black Clover anime villains and delves into the Black Clover manga villains. I also want to state from the beginning that I will not be featuring literally every single villain in Black Clover. Only important ones are those that were the main villain of an arc. Otherwise, the video would be unendingly long, and besides, I don't think you'd want to see me discuss Ryomen Sukuna, the King of Curses, versus the Eye of the Midnight Sun desk jockeys, or the drunkard that beat up on Baby Asta and Yuno. Those are essentially nameless characters in the manga proper. I don't think you guys want to see me talk about Sukuna taking them on. I'm going to start this video by giving brief explanations of curse energy and mana, just in case you are a fan of only one of these series, or if you need any sort of a refresher on the power systems. I will start with cursed energy, the power system of Jujutsu Kaisen. Cursed energy is a supernatural form of energy that is created by negative human emotions. There are a lot more aspects to it, especially when it comes to the creation of cursed spirits, but I'll steer clear from that for the sake of brevity. But I will say that cursed energy is used very similarly to almost any other power system when it comes to the basics. Generally, the higher the cursed energy, the higher the power level of said character, but also the actual control of the energy is of course very important. Jujutsu sorcerers use their cursed energy to actuate their cursed technique, which is essentially their ability with cursed energy. It's basically like spells or stuff like that. Characters in JJK use cursed energy to also reinforce their power levels. Now, Black Clover's mana is very similar. Power levels are determined by how much mana you have, and also how well you can control said mana. Black Clover characters use mana to reinforce their physical stats, and they are given a magical attribute similar to a cursed technique, and they can cast spells with their magic. So as you can see, mana and cursed energy are fairly similar. The question a lot of people ask is if mana and cursed energy would work against the other. The answer would be yes. Cursed energy already essentially exists in Black Clover, as there is negative mana. Negative mana is formed from negative emotions and is actually used to empower curses in Black Clover. Since mana and negative mana work against each other, that means that mana would work on cursed energy, and by proxy, cursed energy would work against mana. So what I'm actually going to start with is to first explain to you a bit about Sukuna, how strong he is, and what kind of power he has. Ryomen Sukuna is the King of Curses, an ancient Jujutsu sorcerer turned cursed object who seems more demon than man. He was once hailed as the strongest sorcerer of his era, the Golden Age, which is notorious for holding the strongest sorcerers in all of history. So, Sukuna being the big dog at that time is why he was hailed as the King of Curses. Keep in mind that an entire army of Golden Age sorcerers teamed up against him and could not actually defeat him. Instead, they had to turn him into a cursed object and spread his power into 20 fingers. 20 because Sukuna actually has 4 arms, not just 2. Sukuna finally gets a vessel when young teen Yuji Itadori eats one of his fingers, causing him to incarnate inside the boy. Thus begins the quest for Yuji to track down the remaining 19 fingers of Sukuna. As of right now, Yuji has consumed 15 fingers, so Sukuna doesn't have a large portion of his power back, and we already know that his potential is very high if he were to get all 20 fingers. Sukuna has various abilities that he can use. His curse technique allows him to use Cleave and Dismantle. Dismantle is Sukuna's basic slashing attack. It cuts his opponent. Cleave is far more powerful, and it adjusts itself based on the target's durability and cursed energy to cut through it. So it's kind of similar to Jack's slashing ability that it adapts to whatever it slashes. Sukuna can activate both Dismantle and Cleave at the same time, and he can use that with his domain expansion that would naturally increase the power of both those attacks and cuts an entire 140 meter radius area and fill the entire space with those slashes. Also, domain expansion actually increases his cursed energy level and thus boosting his stats and allows for him to have a guaranteed hit. Even if characters have abilities that prevent attacks from touching them, a domain expansion would overpower it. He also has this weird flaming arrow ability that is pretty much unexplained, but he can shoot it from his hand as if he were holding an invisible bow and arrow. Sukuna can use reverse curse technique to heal himself. Also, from what we know, Sukuna himself cannot actually be killed for whatever reason, which should play a significant role with any of his encounters with the Black Clover villains. When it comes to Sukuna's actual levels of power, there is a wide range, so please stick with me. When it comes to the attack power, it should be at the very least mountain level. This is because Sukuna should scale above Jogo, who can create mountains with his domain expansion. But also there are characters like Dagon who can create islands and water that surround it with their own domain. Another person that Sukuna should scale well above. And this is pretty consistent in that Sukuna also should scale to Gojo, as he stated on multiple occasions that he believes he can defeat him. And Gojo produced a feat of causing massive earthquakes that reached mainland Japan, despite being off in the subduction zone many miles away in the Japan Trench. And I've seen calculations that put this at around small country level, which means that Sukuna should also scale to that at the very least. Though you could argue it would be far higher than that, because Gojo did that very casually, and if either of them were serious and used a domain expansion, their attack power would be far higher. So you could argue that it's really Sukuna's more so country level than small country level. But there are other feats in the series that could put him far higher, but we'll get to those later. When it comes to speed, it's pretty straightforward. Characters far weaker and slower than Sukuna have been able to react to bullets, and move so much faster that it makes them many times the speed of sound, putting Sukuna at over massively hypersonic at the very least, since he would scale above them. But he should also scale all the way up to being even faster than light. This is because Gojo can create things with imaginary mass. Imaginary mass requires tachyon particles that move at faster than light speeds, and Sukuna should scale at the very least relative to that, since he thinks he can defeat Gojo. Now that we have an idea of how strong Sukuna is, let's pair him up against Black Clover's first villain, Revchi Salik. Yep, that dude from Chapter 1 that tried to steal Yuno's grimoire, giving off to his moment to be the hero and earn his 5-leaf Clover grimoire. I already know that you guys are laughing this musty chain mage away, and don't worry, I am too. But first, at least let me put some respect on his name. Revchi has chain magic, which he uses primarily in an offensive fashion. He can bind people with his chains, and can seal away the magic of the people he catches. Oh shit, isn't Gojo weak to power nullification? I bet my boy Revchi can take him. Okay, that was a joke. But anyways, Revchi is actually pretty impressive when it comes to the strength of a Chapter 1 villain. He's actually considered to be a pretty notorious and powerful magic knight, or at least former magic knight. And that is impressive because that means we can compare him to William Vengeance and his rate of power. A captain is worth 100 magic knights, and William is a captain that can produce a large mountain level feat by creating this massive tree and forming a storm cloud. Revchi should be at the very least 1% of this feat, and that would put him at around city level in attack potency. As for speed, he should also be at least 1% the speed of William Vengeance. William would be around the speed of light even this early in the series, as other captains could fight FTL characters, and thus Revchi would be anywhere from massively hypersonic to sub-relativistic. In short, Sukuna blitzes and one-shots Revchi, stealing his grimoire just for the hell of it, before continuing on to Black Clover's next villain, Heath Grice. Heath is a cold and calculating ice mage with a thirst for precision. He uses his mana to create ice spells that range from piercing to trapping and freezing. His greatest actual feat besides remaining on time is creating this massive piece of ice that has been calculated to be at least large building level in terms of energy. Of course, this would pale in comparison to his attack potency, as he should scale above Revchi, as he was able to put up a better fight against a much stronger Asta who have been training for over 6 months after defeating Revchi. This should also put Heath at well above city level and at least massively hypersonic speeds. He would fare a bit better than Revchi against Sukuna, but Sukuna would have no troubles taking Heath down. He wouldn't even respect him, and he'd steal his watch on his way to the next villain, Mars, the Diamond Kingdom's 8 shining general with 2 magical attributes. Thanks to the many magic experiments conducted upon him, Mars has both fire and mineral magic, with the latter being his primary use, where he can create massive mineral blades, hurl smaller blades, create copies of himself, and cover himself in the minerals to boost his powers, including turning into a massive titan that holds his greatest strength. With his fire magic, he can create basic attacks and spells, and can use the Phoenix Robe to cover himself or his allies in a very powerful healing magic. This spell will heal most wounds immediately, even burns. Mars is far and above the previous Black Clover villains, as not only is he way more skilled, but he's far more powerful. Mars was on the verge of becoming an 8 Shining General, and should be at least comparable to the 8 Shining Generals of old that were more than 50% as strong as the Clover captains. Remember that captains are 100 times stronger than regular knights? Well, the Diamond Generals could casually destroy barrier spells that combine the power of 50 Clover mages. And since that large mountain level feat from William was casual, Mars would likely be into the island level attack potency, and his combat speeds would be relativistic to the speed of light. But this wouldn't be nearly enough for Sukuna. Though I think Sukuna might respect Mars for his strength, but if he didn't, he'd at least be interested in how he was able to have 2 different magic powers at once. Something seemingly similar to him. Even if Mars' Adjutant General Lotus Wumalt came to help him and used his smoke magic that weakened magic power and distracted magic sensory abilities, while it would bridge the gap just a hair more, it still wouldn't be enough to slow down the King of Curses on his gauntlet through Black Clover's Rogues Gallery. The leader of the terrorist organization, the Eye of the Midnight Sun, Licht, who actually is really Patri pretending to be Licht. Patri is a light mage with one of the rarest and most powerful magical attributes in Black Clover, light magic. He can travel at light speed with his magic and can raise his power to get even faster, quite clearly putting Patri at faster than light speeds. Patri uses his light magic to fight very fast and create swords to fight in melee or to launch them at a range. He can also create a whip of light that can ruin the battlefield and be hard to avoid. Furthermore, he can create a massive beam of light called Ray of Divine Punishment, which is his most powerful spell. Considering that Patri scales to Clover captains such as Yami, he should scale to at least island levels of attack potency, but it could easily be large island level or much higher. If Sukuna was nearing respect for Mars' power, then he would likely respect Patri's, especially his speed, since he'd be faster than light. While Patri might put up a good fight against Sukuna, once the King of Curses got serious or got enraged, he would take advantage and defeat Patri. Just like in Black Clover, once Patri is defeated, the Third Eye, the strongest 3 of the Eye of the Midnight Sun, arrived to save him, and Sukuna would need to fight against all 3 of them at once. And to keep things orderly, I will be using the Third Eye's full power for this matchup. Fauna the Hateful will have her developed Salamander, and Veto the Despair, and Raya the Disloyal will be able to go full power and activate their Evil Eye spell. Veto uses beast magic and pairs his very powerful body with his even more powerful magic. Veto reinforces himself with spells and will even create magical beasts that can serve many different purposes in battle. With the Evil Eye forbidden magic, Veto can regrow his limbs. Also, if he is to be defeated, he will go into a final despair where his power flares into a self-destruct. All of the Third Eye do this if they are defeated. Fauna has fire magic and mineral magic. Yeah, just like Mars, because their grimoires had been fused together, giving them access to each of their powers. Being capable of many of the same spells as Mars, she also holds the Fire Spirit Salamander that boosts her magic and the heat of her flames. Their fire is so hot that the waves of heat themselves are strong enough to push Asta back. She can also use the Phoenix Robe to heal herself and her allies. Raya has copy magic, so he has access to a plethora of magical attributes: dark, light, fire, invisibility, etc. So he's very versatile, and he could possibly steal Sukuna's curse techniques. Now, technically he wouldn't be able to because Sukuna has no grimoire, but if we're doing a verse equalization, then he might be able to. When it comes to the power of the Third Eye, they should scale far above that of Patri once they're at their full power, as even in their base forms, they're stated to be on a completely different level than Patri, which means that they all also fight at even higher levels of FTL speeds, but they get a massive upgrade when it comes to their attack power, as it is stated that the Fire Spirit Salamander can vaporize an ocean, which requires many petatons of energy, putting the Fire Spirit at multi-continental, and all the Third Eye should scale to that. So yeah, Sukuna's rampage takes a little bit of a pause here, as the Third Eye box him out. He's going to be really impressed and excited about the power of the Third Eye, especially with their Evil Eye spell, and their use of negative mana, which is similar to cursed energy. Though the Third Eye may have some troubles with killing Sukuna, as from what we know in JJK, the only way to kill Sukuna is if Yuji eats all 20 fingers and then they kill Yuji. This implies that not even Hollow Purple, which is Existence Erasure, would be able to kill Sukuna. So while the Third Eye are beating Sukuna up, he keeps surviving and using reverse curse technique. But you could argue that once he runs out of cursed energy, he'd no longer be able to heal himself, and thus he would lose. Sukuna's small country level attack potency just is not enough to face the Third Eye. But what if I told you that there are feats and scaling that would make a full power Sukuna far more ready to take on the Third Eye? For example, one of the special grades, Yuki, was able to create a black hole. It is stated in the manga that a black hole the size of 2 centimeters holds the mass of the Earth, and it is stated by Kenjaku that it would have destroyed the world. There's a lot of debate on whether or not this scales to Sukuna or even anybody else. That is something that I could discuss in a different video, but for now, we'll use this as a solid method for Sukuna's attack potency, and this is supported further by the fact that there are many statements in the series that Sukuna finger bearers have the power to destroy the world. This would mean that Sukuna might already have planetary power with a fraction of his energy levels. You may disagree with this scaling, that's fine, but I just wanted to actually continue the video and not stop here because that would be kind of boring. As if Sukuna gets bodied by the third eye, then he'd get destroyed by every villain thereafter. But let's just say that Sukuna steals one of the magic stones from Patri, and since magic stones use negative mana, and Sukuna has excellent control of cursed energy, Sukuna uses the magic stone to increase his power levels to that planetary meta. But also, Sukuna would activate his 10 Shadows technique to summon Maharaga. Maharaga is a Shikigami that has the ability to adapt to anything and everything, both in defense and attack, and wields the Sword of Extermination, a blade of positive energy, which would be a weakness to the negative mana that the third eye would be using at this time. If you attack Maharaga, he will adapt to set attacks so that they don't work on him anymore, and his attacks seem to do the same to you. With Sukuna's higher level of power activated and the use of Maharaga, he could overcome the might of the third eye and force their downfall. Now, you might not know this or remember it, but Sukuna has a fire ability. Remember, the fire spirit bonds with people that it deems worthy, and it can bond with people who are seemingly evil. It did that with Fauna. So I wouldn't be surprised if after beating Fauna, the Sukuna actually earns the fire spirit from her. Which means, yeah, he's coming for Fraud Golion. And heading off to the Witch's Forest to face off against two of the major villains present there. The 8 Shining General Ladros and the Witch Queen. Ladros was the strongest 8 Shining General at the time, even more powerful than Mars. He was a super soldier who had undergone experiments because he was peculiar. His magic power was very strong, but he was born without a magical attribute, so he was given one via experimentation, and that power was absorption and emission. This allows him to absorb spells that hit him and make them even more powerful. The Witch Queen has blood magic and can use these birds to teleport her around the battlefield. She's many hundreds of years old and holds on to loads of arcane knowledge that make her a threat in the Black Clover world. Her blood magic can be used to create weapons, heal people, even negating curses, and allows her to turn anyone into her puppet as long as she can get their blood mixed with their magic. Both of these characters should also be multi-continental for scaling above the Salamander. While these two are the most impressive yet, they still aren't enough to take on Sukuna. Upon their defeat and near death, as Sukuna is slowly walking toward the Witch Queen to finish her off, she begins to mock him, telling him that her divinations are telling her that Sukuna's reign of terror will end on this world, that he will end up running into entities that he could not hope to match. Upon recognizing the usefulness that the Witch Queen could be for him, he performs a binding vow with her, offering not to kill her if she is to listen to his commands. Shortly after the binding vow, the Witch Queen would use her blood magic to heal Ladros, but also bring him under her command with her puppet's blood spell. And Sukuna steals her magic stone and heads off to the next villain, the Word Devil, Zagred. Zagred is a high-ranking devil who fields word soul magic that allows him to warp reality with his words, and he can create both magical spells, but also physical objects with his magic. He can summon these massive larvae that eat life energy and mana. He can also summon this trident that warps and breaks down whatever it touches. Zagred cannot be killed by conventional means, like Sukuna, as he's a high-ranking devil, and devils can only be killed if you destroy their heart. And in order to be able to destroy their heart, you must be Arcane Stage or Saint Stage. As for Zagred's power levels, even while heavily suppressed, he scales high above Dorothy and Reeve, who can create moons with a thought. Considering how many times stronger Zagred is over them, he should easily be in these small planet levels of power, and as for his speed, he should be many dozens of times the speed of light by now, possibly even hundreds of times. This would be Sukuna's toughest fight yet, especially because of Zagred's versatility giving him a hard time. But I think that Sukuna's own versatility, fighting skill, and Maharaga's adaptability will get the best of him, especially Maharaga's Sword of Extermination, which is almost like durability negation for cursed spirits, and in a verse equalization, devils and cursed spirits would be equalized. Now you might think that Zagred's life-eating spell would just eat Sukuna and absorb his power and life, but it's actually not going to work that way, because the life-eating spell doesn't actually eat all forms of magic. It only eats regular magic power. Like, this is what it stated. He states that, it eats magic power of this world. Well, in this scenario, cursed energy is like negative mana. It's not going to absorb cursed energy. So it's really only going to be absorbing Sukuna's life energy, which he's going to just be able to easily heal himself with a reverse curse technique. So this massive life-eating larva is not going to be much of a threat to Sukuna. The King of Curses would qualify for Arcane Stage as well, as one needs to be severely affected by forbidden magic to be arcane. Forbidden magic is made of negative mana, and since negative mana is similar to cursed energy, Sukuna would likely have the ability to destroy Zagred's heart, or even devour it. That's right, in Black Clover, if you eat a devil heart, you attain their power and abilities. So Sukuna just got even stronger, and landed a new curse technique in Word Soul Magic. Bro came into Black Clover, and is going to leave even stronger than ever. Next, he would be setting his sights on the Dark Triad. Thanks to the divinations given to him by the Witch Queen, he would first encounter the Dark Disciples, and though the Dark Disciples are many times stronger than Zagred, I believe that after absorbing his power and taking his abilities, Sukuna would be able to fight the Dark Disciples and get his way past them and get up to the Dark Triad. The one who thinks he is leading the Dark Triad is Dante Zogratis, who has body magic, but thanks to his contact with the Devil King Lucifero, has gravity magic as well. When he pairs devil power with his body magic, it makes him huge and far stronger, and he has regeneration that makes him nearly unkillable. Xenon Zogratis has bone magic and is contracted with the Devil King of Space Magic, Beelzebub, granting him access to offensive spatial magic, which is existence erasure. He has healing, and he can create hyperspaces that act as power nullification. Vanica is a battle sexual who gets off on fighting strong opponents. She has blood magic and is contracted with the Devil of Curses, Magicula. She can use curses to passively weaken the magic power of her opponents and their magical spells as well, and send damage curses at them. I will allow that the Dark Triad will have 100% of their devil power. When Dante was only at 80% devil power, he could create a black hole, Singularity, that if it were a real black hole, would equate to large planetary levels of energy. And this is consistent because he's many hundreds or even thousands of times stronger than Zagred, who was small planetary, which would make all of the Zogratis siblings large planetary at the very least, and each of the siblings would be thousands of times faster than light by this point. So Sukuna has finally met his match in the Black Hole Reverse. Even if he were to take them one-on-one, he still wouldn't be able to be strong enough or fast enough to win. But hey, maybe Vanica would fall in love with Sukuna. I could totally see that happening if there ever was a crossover between Black Clover and Jujutsu Kaisen. Now you could argue that just maybe, Sukuna could use the magic stones that he's gathered to unleash his highest possible power that you can argue for him, as there are arguments that Sukuna has infinite power. And I'm not just arguing that as a hyperbole. I mean that the King of Curses might have the ability to damage people who could survive universal explosions or survive infinite damage. Being able to destroy an infinite amount of nearly anything, or containing literally infinite power, qualifies one to be a tier called High Universal. You can argue that Sukuna scales to this because he scales above Rika, who is stated to have boundless or limitless cursed energy, which can also mean endless or infinite. Yuta is also considered to have a boundless or limitless amount of cursed energy, and in certain scenarios, Hikari can reach infinite levels of cursed energy. On top of this, Yoruzu created something called a true sphere. In real-world math, a true sphere has infinite pressure. This is actually stated in the manga as well, and Maharaga can destroy that infinite pressure, and Sukuna scales to Maharaga in terms of power. Also, you could argue that Gojo might even be in this tier too, because he can use Hollow Purple, which is combining two infinities together. He can also create an infinite amount of information with his Immeasurable Void domain expansion. And as we talked about earlier, Sukuna should scale to Gojo. So as long as you think Sukuna's attack potency scales anywhere between small country level, planetary, or high universal ranges, then we're good. But if you think Gojo is like only town level because of this chart, or that he's somehow outer versal, then we're probably going to have disagreements. But if Sukuna has infinite power, he beats the Dark Triad, right? Well, unfortunately no, as they also have grounds for infinite power, and it's arguably even more supported than Sukuna's infinite power argument. Dante is stated to have infinite mana, and he creates a singularity, which if you don't know, a singularity is when the mass becomes infinitely dense and would require infinite energy to do so. The Dark Triad are also way stronger than Dorothy, who created an infinite universe in her glamour world. So yeah, I don't think Sukuna wins this. At this point in the series, the power gaps in Black Clover, the power cliffing became way too crazy. I think that the Dark Triad are just way too strong, have too many combined abilities that Maharaga would not be able to adapt in time to defeat them. Now, I will get into some of the Black Clover manga spoilers for other villains that Sukuna could encounter, but I think it's a bit redundant because he can't defeat the Dark Triad, then he's not really defeating anyone stronger than them. as both of the Devil Twins, Lilith and Ama, are stronger than the 100% Dark Triad, and they can fuse to become exponentially stronger than that. Safe to say that Sukuna likely doesn't have the firepower to match them. Devil Xenon is many more times powerful than even Fusion Lilith, so that's going to be even worse of a stomp. As for Lucifero and Megicula, I kind of want to wait and give those matchups their own specific video, as I'd love to take the King of Curses of JJK and have him face off against the Devil of Curses in Black Clover and Megicula, and then also pair him off against the King of Devils as well. Maybe I'll make those videos once we get to see Sukuna's full power and all of his abilities in the manga. Now, to end the video, I'm going to be skipping all the paladins because their scaling is kind of boring, and they're not really major villains anyways. So I'm ending the video with Lucius Zogratis, the Wizard Emperor, who seeks to forge his own heaven in the Black Clover world. Sorry, but he'd toss around Sukuna any way he'd want. Time magic would erase him, or he could use his soul magic to purify Sukuna's cursed energy and make him his pawn. And sure, Sukuna has resisted soul magic in the past, but that soul magic is not nearly as powerful as Lucius's. And sure, you could argue that Sukuna cannot be killed because of his reverse curse technique. Lucius has ways around that. See, when Lucius traps anyone in his time orbs, it not only stops them in time, but it also is power nullification. It will reduce anyone's power to 0, meaning that Sukuna would have no curse energy to operate with, and therefore he'd have no way of doing reverse curse technique, leading to his death and downfall at the hands of Black Clover's strongest villain. Now, I hope you guys liked the way I decided to approach this video. I didn't want to do it just a normal 1v1 or whatever versus every Black Clover villain. I thought that'd be too formulaic and a little boring. And I also know that in terms of how people scale Sukuna, there is wide ranges. Either you think he's small country level, you think he's planetary, or you think he's high universal. So I wanted to find a way that would tackle all of those aspects of how strong you think he is and put that into Black Clover. Let me know how you thought of this video. Was there any villains you thought that Sukuna would do better against than what I said, or any villains that you think they would do better against Sukuna than I said? So it could go either way. But yeah, I think Sukuna would have a fun time in the Black Clover world until he got to the higher ups and he'd be like, oh yeah, Black Clover is kind of built different. Now, a part of the reason why Black Clover is stronger than JJK is because Black Clover has just simply been going on for a lot longer than JJK, and also it's just kind of a bigger, like more grander scope of, you know, fighting devils, which are gods and stuff like that. Like, sure, you're fighting cursed spirits, but it's a little different. So like JJK is a very strong verse, but it's just not comparable to Black Clover yet. But Sukuna, as the top dog of JJK and being able to take advantage of things like the magic stones in Black Clover, I think he could make it pretty far, but he would not go all the way. Let me know your thoughts on this video down below. Leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications. You can join my Discord and follow me on Twitter. Hope you guys all have an amazing day. Peace out.